People of Earth, we have come to upgrade your cosmic consciousness. DNA activation ready. In 3, 2, 1.
Hi, welcome to Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership. I'm Craig Anderson.
And I'm Lou Quinto.
Lou, are you ready to break down some more stereotypes and preconceptions about an industry today?
Absolutely. You sent me some background information on our guests and everything, and I did some extra research. And I am, again, you and I have talked in previous podcasts about what COVID has brought to businesses, and we've talked about taking the business model and throwing it on the ground and smashing it and picking up the big important pieces. And I can't wait to talk to our guest about the remodeling that he has helped instigate and been a catalyst of when it comes to the banking industry. That's all I'm going to give away. You can give away the rest.
I'm fairly sure he didn't break anything, though.
No, he didn't break anything.
That's mostly your violence that we always hear about on how you want to break up old models.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, today on Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership, we are interviewing Thomas Feindt of Grow Financial Federal Credit Union. Easy for you to say, Craig, out of the Tampa Bay area in Florida, but also they have stores in the South Carolina area as well. And we really wanted to talk to him because, you know, we always have these images of banks as these state institutions, and he has really focused a lot on people and culture and engagement to help them be successful. So we're
Boy,
really
you are so excited. You can't get the words out. You're so excited.
I know. It's the end of the year thing. I'm all excited, Lou, but let's jump into our interview now with Thomas Feindt. Thomas, welcome to Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership. Lou and I are so excited to have an opportunity to speak with you today.
Craig, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity for our discussion. I look forward to it.
Absolutely.
Sure. And Thomas, that's what most people say at the beginning of our podcast. Thanks for the opportunity. And then I have a funny feeling after we get done, there's been a few people who've said, that's not an opportunity I was thankful for.
So I won't be taking your phone call afterwards? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. The cease and desist orders flow in.
Right. Yeah.
I'll keep an open mind about it.
Exactly. So just stay off of Twitter for the next 3 weeks after your podcast comes out.
No fear there. I'm not a social media person, so you don't have to worry about that.
I think Craig and I are both moving in that direction, except for the podcast. We're moving away from all social media, except again for this podcast.
So, well, Thomas, we love getting C-suite execs, CEOs on here to talk about what's going on in their organizations, especially those who are really driving change. And that's why we're so excited for the opportunity to talk to you. We love doing it in financial services, legal services, all these areas that people think are, you know, very buttoned down and tight organizations that are actually driving engagement and culture. And that's what was so interesting to us about you. So maybe just to start out with, you know, as the leader there since last January, how are you looking at culture and employee engagement as investments and drivers of the success of Grow Financial Federal Credit Union?
Sure. Great question. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about Grow. This is a place that's very near and dear to my heart. The people that work here are vitally important to me. And having been here for the last 10 years, you know, it's one thing I can honestly say, we have a history of really focusing on the team member and their experience. I mean, we really believe that our external service to our customers, to our members, will never exceed the internal service that our team members feel about the organization. Oftentimes people ask me, you know, what do you do? What's your job as a CEO? And my answer has really consistently been, my hope is when our team members' alarms go off in the morning, they're genuinely excited about the opportunity to come work here. And it's funny, you mentioned about financial services seem to be a buttoned up industry, and it can be. But for me, I think banking can be really exciting. It doesn't have to be boring. It can really be about, we have an opportunity to interact with people at really important moments of their life. Their first car they're purchasing, sending a child to school, or maybe even those more difficult points when they've lost a job and they're trying to figure out how are they going to make ends meet. So banking can be very exciting. It can be very engaging. You know, you get to be a part of people's lives and help them find ways to, really, we talk about this idea of chasing the American dream and pursuing the American dream. And we get an opportunity to be a part of that with our members' lives. And so when we think about culture, we really do want our team members to be bought into that vision. We adopted a tagline a few years ago about we serve people and not profit, and that our credit union makes things grow: people, money, communities, and dreams. Well, those statements only happen if we have a workforce that is aligned and understands their unique roles with our organization.
I loved all of that. Okay. And I'm going to ask a question because you brought up the word aligned right at the end there. And that's what I was thinking the entire time you're talking about is how do you as a CEO get people aligned to move in the direction to all of those positive things that you just mentioned? Because alignment just isn't an HR thing that you expect, okay, it's going to happen. What are some of those intangible things that you can give some advice to some CEOs of small businesses that need to get their people aligned? What are you doing to create that, and I'm going to say, alignment?
Yeah. So Lou, great question. And everything I'm about to offer, let me not come across that I'm an expert. I'm still learning as we go along here. But really what I've learned is the power of stories and using examples of team members, of things that they've done. When we say we want to embrace risk, that sounds great. What does that mean? But when I'm made aware of examples that team members have gone above and beyond for one of our customers or for each other, or made a decision that's maybe opposite of what we've done in the past, how do you highlight that and say, when I'm talking about embracing risk, this is an example of what I mean by that? And oftentimes it's really highlighting the work of our team and our team members because they're looking for that permission to be aligned. They're looking for that permission to try to achieve these grand aspirational statements that we made. That's one of the things I talked about, the tagline of we serve people, not profit, and that how our credit union makes things grow. I've always said, guys, I love these words, but what I'm more interested in is what are the actions? And so how do we find actions of our team members that how are they making an impact in the community? How are they making an impact with our own employee education? And then highlighting that to the rest of the workforce around, these are examples of what bring to light these more ambiguous words around risk, or making a difference, or fill in the blank, or whatever you were talking about there. So stories and examples.
So it sounds to me as if a significant portion of your job is that of cheerleader.
Oh, absolutely. Cheerleader and chief communicator. I work with a coach, and he reminds me that regularly about really that one of my main jobs is to communicate a message. But what I've learned over the last 2 years, it's not just about the message, it's about making the connection, alignment, whatever you talk about. But really those activities of when our team members are doing what I'm asking them to do and then amplifying it. Often, the other thing we're working on too is trying to find real value in failure, because that's another area we've been really risk tolerant and tried to avoid over the years. And now we're trying to shift into more of a learning organization, and one that embraces hypothesis, embraces forecasting, but then also embraces failure. So the next time we have a decision point, we can now learn from that. So instead of crucifying someone for making a decision or coming down on them if it wasn't the outcome we wanted, what's the real learning there? And then how do we build from that?
I think you are the first CEO that I've ever heard express those thoughts and words, is that we need to understand that mistakes are learning experiences and not a time to get called on the carpet and chastised for making that mistake. And I'm just going to ask, it's an extended contract you signed, right?
I also have learned bad news doesn't get better with time. So I've got a really great working relationship with our board, and I don't just try to give them the good, cheery, happy news. I try to talk about what's really happening. And Craig alluded to this earlier. So 2020 was my first year as a CEO. Plenty of opportunities to talk about difficult things that were happening to our organization. And plenty of things that I could say, I don't know what the final outcome is going to be, but this is how we're going to try. This is how we're going to respond to this individual action. Because 2020 wasn't just about COVID. That was one of, really 3 once in 100-year events that happened. You think about COVID, you think about the discussion about racial injustice, social injustice that took place, but then also the election at the end of the year. I mean, there was major things happening. And there was no playbook that's told me as a CEO what to do when this happened. And so this idea of embracing risk, but making sure that our management team and the board of directors were closely aligned, again, to use that word again, around with how we wanted to respond to these unique crises that kept presenting themselves time after time. And then even the COVID coming back with the Delta variant and how we would respond to that.
So from day one, your board has been used to you giving them bad news. So when you give them good news, they're like excited. Like, this is great.
I would say they're used to be giving them real news, good, bad.
Good. I like that. I like that. It's not bad news. It's real news. I love that. That's a great term. Yep.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So Thomas, you became CEO at Grow back in January of 2020, probably big plans, big exciting things you wanted to do. And then we got to March, and you've had this time over the last year and a half now, almost kind of taking the team through it, taking the organization through it. You and I talked about how, the focus of the company, the credit union, is so much on people, whether they're your employees, which we were just talking about, your clients, or just the community at large. How did that focus on people as a guiding light and guiding principle help you guys manage all the challenges last year?
So it really was it brought us back to the center, what matters most. And so to your point, we've always had a history of focusing on our members, those that use the organization, and our team members. But one of the things we started thinking about in 2020 was the community as a whole, and how might we help the community pull through these different events and things that were happening. And then along the way, each time we helped the community, we learned more about ourselves as a company. We learned more, what does it mean to serve people and not profit? And it snowballed into now, there was a time before we might have asked, well, what does Grow stand for? What is our North Star? Why do we come to work? And with all of the events that took place over 2020 and how we decided to embrace risk and take the organization down a different path, whether it was keeping our stores open during the beginning of 2020, when we thought, we really have to make sure we don't create a barrier between people and their money. And if we could keep our locations open and we could keep them safe and we could protect our team members and be available for our members, that would be a real win. When we thought about the Paycheck Protection Program that was administered through the SBA, we weren't a lender within that at that time. And we decided, we're going to figure out how to do this, and found ways to help more than 2,000 small businesses in the footprints that we serve. Many were able to achieve or receive loans about $20,000 or less. Said differently, we helped a lot of the businesses that the bigger banks weren't interested in helping because there just wasn't enough profit margin in there. But those businesses we helped were able to stay open because of the loans they were able to receive through the SBA. And then lastly, we also learned through our a program we developed last year called the On Us campaign. And that's where we gave money to small businesses in the Bay Area and in Columbia and in Charleston, and asked, the only thing that they do is give product away as well. So again, it was this idea of trying to create smiles and moments of happiness during periods of time when people had tremendous amounts of anxiety, or they were worried about what was going to happen next. Maybe that small thing was a barbecue sandwich or an ice cream sandwich or whatever it might be, small little things, but just moments of unexpected happiness that we were able to provide really reminded us of how important people are really at the center of everything that we do, whether it's the people that work here, the people that bank here, or the people that are our neighbors. And again, as a credit union, this idea of being a not-for-profit financial institution gives us that latitude to be able to reinvest the profits of the organization into our people, into our members, or into our communities.
And I'm guessing, when you have that idea of people over profits, by putting the people first, the profits will ultimately flow through that and follow. That's
We're
brilliant.
having one of the best years financially that we've ever had in 2021. So that wasn't why we did it, but the outcomes have certainly far surpassed our expectation financially for 2021.
That's fantastic. Wow. Lou?
Yeah. The one you piqued my interest. You refer to the typical bank branch as a store.
Yeah, we do. That's what we call them, because we see that we're in the retail experience, and so we've tried to adapt language more similar to the retail experience versus calling them a branch.
Yeah.
Financial services are highly commoditized.
Right.
We are in the retail business. And so we now look to hire people that have retail experience. I don't look for folks that have banking experience, because truth be told, banking isn't all that hard. We can teach you the nuances of our role. What I can't teach you is how to be interesting. I can't teach you how to be, it takes too long to try to teach people how to be empathetic. It takes too long to teach people to care about others. I'd much rather hire people that have that background, and then we can teach them the individual pieces of it. But for us to win in a highly commoditized business, you have to win on the experience. And so that's really our, that's where we want to win on, is those experiences that our members have when they engage with the organization.
And I'm sure, particularly during the COVID and everything, all of your associates had to really demonstrate a very strong empathetic side, because immediately, in a bad financial situation, and we've all gone through them, from one degree or another. But the last thing you want to do is go to somebody that you're banking with and throw everything out on the table and confess, I don't have the money to do this. I mean, that's got to be the hardest thing for a person, to go into a bank and go, I'm in trouble. And how can you help me? And during 2020, I'm sure that was keeping a lot of people up at night. And I love the philosophy you talk about, is hiring from retail, because it takes too long to teach empathy and too long to teach good customer service. But retail people already have that. Craig, this would have been perfect for you coming out of school. You went into banking with a liberal arts degree, is there something? So you would have been Thomas's dream.
We don't talk about my dark, deep past, but yes, my English degree launched me into a great banking career for reasons we don't need to get into.
So I can imagine how that empathy really, and we've talked about it from the leadership side of it, but from the customer service side of it, Craig, we haven't really talked about that. And this is a perfect situation that Thomas brings up, is that it's not just the leadership that needs to show empathy, but it's got to be the people dealing with the customer who has to also show empathy, because we all have stories of bad customer service where you're like, I am never going to that place again. I will not do that. And here in a banking situation in 2020, it had to be probably one of the highest extremes of empathy is got to be our number one thing in order to help, not just help them through financially, help them through mentally, because it took a toll mentally on people as well as financial.
So you hit on a couple of really important things. And one of the things I'm really proud, even prior to COVID, our collections area, the folks that really helped our members go through a bad period, they rebranded their group name to Loan Resolution Specialists. And they really embrace this idea of that is the group that you go to when you need help resolving your loan. It's not about collecting the debt against you, but it's about developing win-win scenarios that allows the person to be able to repay their financial obligations. Sometimes we might need to grant extensions. We might make all kinds of modifications to help people be able to work through whatever is their temporary moment of financial hardship. But that's at the essence of who we are. Now, during 2020, the bigger message we had to talk with our team members about across the entire enterprise was taking a deep breath and giving that person you're interacting with a chance to get things off their chest, because sometimes that's all the person needed to. And then once you're done working with them, you had to reset back to zero, because the next person needed you at your best place. And so if you had a difficult conversation, you still had to find a way to reset So the next person you engaged with, you weren't carrying that baggage from one conversation to another. And so we really embraced this idea of encouraging our team members to take vacations, to take time away, so they could prepare for their own, look after their own mental health. So then they were able to be available for our members when they were back in working time. I'm not a big fan of people working more than 40 hours a week. I'm not a big fan of people working on vacations. I think all of that really it doesn't allow you to come back fully recharged. And so that was a big message I carried last year, was to really encourage our team members to think about their own mental health and do whatever they needed to take the time and be the best versions of themselves. So then when they were engaging with our customers and our clients, they could put that best face forward.
Yeah, I mean, because you have to think of it, during 2020, I wonder how many business owners, small business owners, that came up against that financial crutch really became, it thought of themselves as the George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, where the bank is going to take everything from me and I'm going to be in ruins. Wow. I have to say, I'm impressed with what you said that the credit union did. That is fantastic. Yeah.
Well, and honestly,
Craig, you can relate to it because Craig's background is, he ran, his last business was helping to run student loan debt, but it was very similar to what you said, Thomas. It wasn't collection. It was the loan repayment, or what was the term you used, Thomas? The
resolution.
Yes, resolution. And Craig, that's basically what you did with your call center, right?
Well, it's more or less, it's building relationships with people instead of being the dunning police coming after them, right? It's I'm here to help as opposed to I'm here to collect. And that's such a fascinating piece. So the question I have, Thomas, is now we're kind of, I won't say through the pandemic, because Lou always closes us out with keeping distance and washing your hands. So he doesn't think we're out yet. But
I try, all due respect, I did try briefly to make my closing tagline, to be the best leader you can be. But then Delta came along and COVID came back. So I'm back again.
Back at it. But one big outcome from all this has been remote work. And especially, I came out of banking and the mental framework of banking was there's certain jobs that have to be in the bank. And now we found a way, right? Yep. You've been so driven on your culture. You've been so driven on, the messaging that you're doing, but now, and you said earlier, that you're probably going to still be pretty remote. How are you going to keep the culture alive? And is this remote work thing, how are you going to keep your culture and all these values alive when you have fewer interactions face to face every day?
Yeah. So again, I go back to, I don't know yet. We're going to do our best, but the way we look at it is, again, from the hypothesis, we sent 80% of our headquarters staff out when COVID first started. And we've kept folks out since to this point. Now, we've offered, if people would like to return back to a headquarters facility to do their work, they can, but we've not seen any reduction in productivity. We've not seen that we can't get work done as fast as we were previously. Now, it is true that at times it's harder to be collaborative when you're working in a more remote experience, but I don't know that we can't overcome that as well. That's just new for us. And so, when we talk about empowering our team members, for me, I think it's a really interesting opportunity to say, you know what, we're going to give you the option to decide where you can do your best work. We're not going to tell you that you have to report to some specific address to accomplish your work. If you feel like you can do your best work from home, do it from home. If you feel like you can do it from the library or in front of the river, do it in front of the river, right? So really giving people the opportunity to decide where is it that they want to do their work. Now, the flip side is when you make that accommodation, that means you should still expect them to produce the same high quality work as you would back on a grow-owned property for us. What I don't understand is this idea of, well, we're going to lose culture or people aren't really doing their work, and so we're going to make them come back to a work facility. That seems totally contrary. if they're able to get their work done at home, you've given, for some people, depending on what their commute is, you might have given them back 2 hours in their day that they're not spending commuting back and forth. You might have given them more flexibility where they can go to have lunch with their child at their school. You might have given them an opportunity they can be more involved in the after school activities. There's a litany of things you might have been able to give back to folks. And I guess my question is, why would you want to take that away? This, COVID has given every leader an opportunity to reevaluate how and where work is accomplished. I just don't believe that proximity equals purpose. Like, I don't have to have people in the same room to connect with them around what does it mean to work here? How do we want to have an impact? What is important to us? Technologies help that. I mean, honestly, I feel like I've had some better conversations with folks through Zoom and video than I might have when they worked here, because it's also a little bit more convenient to bring somebody up on a video call. So
yeah, and what you have just said, Craig and I, obviously we do a lot of research before all of our podcasts and everything, and so I think we're well grounded when it comes to remote work, and the pendulum swung all the way to one end in 2020 in March, and Craig has advocated that it's going to come back down and go the other way, and somewhere in the middle. But what you just said, you're embracing the change as we can make this better than what's going on right now. And by incorporating and looking at these different things, because as you said, 2 hours a day saving, and that's 2 hours just traveling. You didn't even wake up, shower, shave, and eat breakfast. I mean, which is probably another hour and a half, where when we wake up, remote work, throw on the sweats, boom, I'm at my desk, I'm ready to go. And the family life and everything like that. We've heard from Goldman Sachs, we've heard from Jamie Dimon at Chase, where if you can go to a restaurant and you can eat in New York City, you're going to come to work. And your take on this, Thomas, is just the complete opposite of that. It's truly an embracing everything that you've said with how you deal with your customer and the relationship you have with your customer. Going back to the question I asked initially about alignment, and all of that helps that team get in alignment. So my question then is going to be, I'm going to hit you with a management question, because you talked about, as long as you maintain that productivity, and we all know that people only do what's measured, how have your metrics changed for your managers to be able to determine that productivity has maintained at that high level?
So again, this is where it's such at the beginning of the story. It's difficult to really give a full laid out answer, and it also depends on the department. So for our contact center, it's easy to measure the number of phone calls they bring in. Same thing in our loan resolution specialists. You can look at the number of conversations, number of members they're helping, what are the outcomes that are being achieved from that. But I also look at, what's our net promoter score? What are our members saying about their experience with the organization? We look at our turnover rates. How many people are choosing to leave the organization and go work for other firms versus what we've seen historically? So there's a couple of different ways that we are looking at it at the 40,000 foot level to try to see, is the organization moving in the right direction? With the recognition of, again, what gets measured gets done. Right. And so as we come down a couple levels from 40,000 feet, we still are trying to develop more and more metrics to be able to point to their leaders the overall productivity of the organization. Again, when I make that statement, I look at how many members have joined the organization, what's the amount of deposit dollars that have flown into the organization, right. What's our turnover levels, and those are all pointing in the right direction for us. Mm-hmm. And again, we also look at the number of projects that our IT groups are able to bring to market. How quickly are we able to do some of these things versus the past? But we're also on our agile adoption process. And so moving from how we got work done 4 or 5 years ago to the way we're trying to embrace a faster methodology to bring projects to the marketplace, embracing MVP, minimum viable versus always trying to have everything laid out. I mean, there's a number of major organizational changes happening within our company right now.
Agile adoption. I love it. You've just peppered us with so many unique and refreshing terms that, again, when people think banks in many instances, particularly the small business person, it's I got to make sure that I pay my monthly note or I pay off that loan, and there's not that face that you are that I'm visualizing through your discussion here, that if I'm working with Grow Financial, boom, it's totally different than going down the street to the branch and dealing with the teller or the executive. I'm seeing a completely refreshing stance.
So we do look at language a lot here. We got rid of the title teller probably 7 years ago because I always felt like it was a very demeaning title, because oftentimes it was, I'm sorry, I can't help you because I'm just a teller.
Right.
And so even there we converted
or we're starting you in as a teller. It was that mailroom position in the bank.
So, I mean, for our team members in our stores, we call them relationship specialists, because again, that's what we want them to focus on, is a relationship, and trying to have that relationship with the member, that we can use our financial acumen to present options to that person that might make their life where they can more affordable, but again, built on a placement of trust, and not that we're just trying to stick it to them.
Right.
That's
wonderful.
Now, the agile adoption is also this move towards trying to be more of a startup organization. How can we be more nimble? How do we embrace the idea of cross-functional teams versus just one business unit being responsible for something? Really looking at horizontal teams, empowering them to make the decision, and giving them the vision of what we want to accomplish, and then asking, what resources do you need, versus trying to micromanage and over-process it.
great. Wow. Well, Thomas, this has been fantastic. So we always end our segments, our interviews, and thank you for being here with our key takeaways. So Lou, what is your key takeaway today?
My key takeaway is, Thomas, after this, I'm going to be sending you my resume because I want to come work for Grow Financial.
You're always hiring, so feel free to. You have my email address. I look forward to reviewing it.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. But no, my key takeaway out of this entire conversation is you have demonstrated what Craig and I have talked about a lot, particularly during COVID and coming out of COVID, and what do businesses need to do? And that is change the business model. And you've done such a great job taking probably the most, anyone's mind, a mental picture of a rigid, stodgy, old business model, and you have transformed it into a business model that is friendly, that attracts customers, that creates those relationships, which is not out there right now. And so I think you're a perfect example of anyone who doesn't think they can change the typical business model, that it can be done, and it can be done successfully. So Thomas, my hat's off to you and the rest of the folks at Grow Financial. This was fantastic.
You're very kind with your comments. Again, I'm very fortunate to work with the
Well, that's only because I'm sending you my resume. When we
All right, send it on. No, I've enjoyed our conversation, and I appreciate the questions.
I truly mean those comments, because we have talked to a lot of business leaders, and no one has really touched upon the changing business model stuff that you've done that has been successful. So, Craig, your key takeaway.
Well, my key takeaway is something that we've talked about before on here, is these kinds of changes in culture and alignment, and all these important things start with the CEO, and then they work their way through the organization and come back around. But when the leaders are invested in these efforts, as I think we have seen you are, Thomas, it's what drives change in organizations. So that's my key takeaway. Good. Thomas, any key takeaways from you as we've gone through our interview today?
So I come back to just where we started with, is at the end of the day, people's what make the difference, right? So the more you can keep focused on your team, on your members and the community, that's what's going to make the difference. You know, for me, I recognize I'm not always, there will be a day I'm not in this seat. And so while I have it, I'm going to do everything I can to try to affect this change for the good of our communities. And it's an honor to be in the seat. It's an honor to work with my board of directors. They really help inspire me, push me, and support me to make these types of changes that we've just talked about today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We really enjoyed meeting with you. And thank you very much for being here.
Very good. Have a great day.
All right, you too, Thomas. Take care. Check your email. Yeah.
I will. Don't worry. See you later. Bye, Craig.
Bye.
Bye. Well, Craig, I have to say, Thomas did not let me down. I was very impressed with everything he had to say. And as I said in my key takeaway, what he has done is truly should be an inspiration, a role model, a benchmark for all businesses who think or believe that they can't change their business model for the best.
Yeah, it's really, as I said in the intro, we have these assumptions about certain industries and they have really turned that on its head at Grow Financial. And really just, I love the vision. I love where they're headed, and it'll be interesting maybe down the road to check in on them. But we probably won't have the podcast then, because apparently you're going to be working there. So we'll do the best we can.
Well, I haven't submitted my application yet.
Well, yeah, I'll just be here by myself.
No, but no, and as a CEO of a very strong and thriving organization, we again thank Thomas for the time that he has given us on our podcast to help educate and to bring good information to all of our viewers and listeners. So with that, I'd like to say that next week is going to be Thanksgiving, and we will be taking the week. Craig, this is the first week we have taken off since we've launched Q&A on breakthrough leadership in October of 2019. Yeah.
Well, that explains why I'm retired.
Yes. So we will be taking Thanksgiving off next week. So we hope that you'll pick up with us again the week after Thanksgiving. So until next time, remember, we are available on all of your major podcast platforms. So please rate, subscribe, send us some comments so that we know what you want to hear more about as we go into 2022. And in addition, remember, we go ahead and download all of our podcasts, both in audio and visual form, on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and of course, our website, qaleadership.com. So until next time, keep your hands washed, keep your distance. Have a great Thanksgiving. I'm Lou Quinto.
And I'm Craig Anderson.